Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, December 22nd. If I sound a little different, I attempted to basically put some lifts on my recliner new chair to try and get it a little bit higher. It like where I put the TV on the wall, particularly when I added a second TV hanging down below my first TV. I really didn't I had a different chair with an adjustable height. Now I have a recliner, obviously no adjustable height there. Um, so I'm like maybe an inch or two, maybe even three, too low. Uh, so I tried to move it, tried to put a lift under it, didn't really work. Um, this recliner is a lift recliner, so literally, like trying to put things under it is going to be very dangerous in anyways, because if it tilts over, particularly when somebody's sitting in it, uh, that you it could easily fall on you or break things, people, or objects. Um, so I gave up on that, but I moved my microphone away. I moved everything away while moving, trying to move furniture, so now everything's might be in a slightly different place. That's too long of an explanation for a very simplistic concept. Uh, for the accountability section today, I will say I'm still playing Fallout 3. I am increasingly getting desperate. I'm not quite super desperate yet, or really, but I'm starting to feel the beginning of that, certainly, where there's some desperation to just get on with it. Uh, Slight spoiler for the game, I had been mostly avoiding the main story, and I decided I just couldn't really avoid the main story anymore. So I went to Rivet City as it was on the way to the main story, and um, by going to Rivet City, which that is like the next big city I found, with the exception of Megaton. It's the only big city. Everything else, it's been small encampments where there's just not a ton of people going there. Arguably, Rivet City and Megaton are too big, though, and there's too much going on there. And I'm specifically, because of one quest, being asked to basically talk to everybody in Rivet City. Um, and it definitely makes me wonder if I should go back to Megaton and just exhaust every dialogue choice with every character in Megaton, which I really haven't done. Fallout 3 feels like a smaller game than what I remember it, but it also very obviously has problems um, where you will either spend 2-3 hours running through metro stations and what are effectively just fairly linear dungeons, um, or you're going to spend several hours in a city like Rivet City talking to people. There's a very bad mix between the two, so much so that I could see completely different teams dealing with the city development versus the dungeons development, and maybe even internal conflict as to whether one or the other should be removed. If you removed all the dungeons, you'd basically be making a Telltale game. Um, and if you removed all of the conversations, or most of the conversations, you'd basically be making a dungeon crawler. So I don't think you would have made a better game either way. I just think there should be better integration. Uh, you definitely, when you're in the dungeon, don't feel like there's really a chance that you're going to come across somebody who is non-hostile. And when you do, on a rare occasion, come across somebody who's non-hostile, they immediately cut you into a cutscene and stop you from attacking them. Um, see, swordcraft and bloodcraft today. Uh, as Swordcraft. Is there anything else really to say about Fallout 3 though? No, I really don't think there is too much to say about it. You're really not progressing very fast. I have hit a point where I don't think I would just immediately jump to Fallout 4, but with the winter sale now starting, and we'll talk about that for probably a long time in a second. I do want to get all the DLC for Fallout 4 in this shopping trip, but I'm not expecting that I'm going to jump directly to that. And there really is nowhere to go but backwards as far as the Elder Scrolls series. I've covered Skyrim, but I'm not willing to go back to Oblivion and try and play that or anything earlier. I don't even know if you can play any of the Elder Scrolls games before Oblivion. And it is definitely weird, I will say, to play Fallout 3 and see that Skyrim really did improve several small things that you see in Fallout 3. How the crafting concept is kind of useless in Fallout 3 because you have to have schematics and there's only a limited number of schematics. How the perks are kind of sparse and randomly placed. A lot of elements are sparse and randomly placed, and you'll talk to somebody and they'll say, I'll give you XP for scrap metal, for instance, and that gives you the feeling that, oh, well, then every garbage item potentially is going to have somebody out there who wants that specific item and will give you a better deal. And it's not really true. There's I'll say sugar bombs. If you find sugar bombs, you should hoard those. Pre-war money, pre-war books, you should hoard those. But I don't think there's anybody out there that wants pencils or cigarettes or several other items. Like, there's quite a lot of different items, and if you're not careful, the game really wants to push you into that obsessive collecting mentality. I would definitely recommend everybody just cheat it as far as endurance and becoming over encumbered, either using a mod. Frankly, you probably don't even need a mod. There probably is just a console command you could do to increase your weight carry limit to an infinite amount. I did find, though, that if you have a repair ability, you actually can solve a you can really solve a problem quite a bit there.
My mercy becometh justice.
Because with the repair ability, which I don't think I really repaired anything when I first played Fallout 3, you could take the guns and the armor and combine two very low condition, low value guns, if they're the same kind of gun, and then get a better condition, better value gun, which then removes half the weight of it. And really, that's just another example of many systems that are just not well explained.
War is a drama of life and death.
Like, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that is tutorialized, and it takes way too long to get into the game for Fallout 3, and then there's a whole bunch of systems that aren't ever tutorialized, or they're very poorly tutorialized, which creates
See if you can amuse me.
scenarios where you just kind of don't know what to do, or you don't know you can do things. Clearly Bethesda was too obsessed with the idea of making systems instead of being focused on making a game first and foremost. A game that was fun. To that point, I think that I should also mention that I've been feeling fairly motion sick after playing the Fallout 3 for a few hours, and I looked it up as far as what the suggestion there was, and it said go into the console and change the field of view. So I changed the field of view to 93. It looked a little weird for maybe an hour or two, and then my eyes kind of adjusted. There is definitely some weird kind of like fisheye camera thing happening there. I also reduced the mouse sensitivity since I'm playing with the controller. It was at 2, I reduced it to 1, because there definitely was a very noticeable difference between what the left stick could do to change how fast the left stick moves somebody's head when you're strafing and moving, and how fast the right stick pivoted the player's head to turn to look to the left or the right. You could turn your head 3-4 times faster than you could walk, and that definitely probably is a factor in motion sickness too. The only other thought I had is that I would have had to go back and have a vertical sync enabled or disabled to see if maybe there's some incorrect frame pacing causing motion sickness. Generally, incorrect frame pacing though doesn't cause motion sickness. I mean, in fact, almost never do I get motion sick in video games. Fallout 3 was very groundbreaking, but it definitely had a lot of problems. And since I'm playing the Game of the Year edition, you'd think more of those things would be fixed. And that is the allegation, I think rightfully always pointed at Bethesda, is that they have resold and resold and resold their products without even putting in some basic improvements. Like, it would be very easy for them to start to think down that path a little bit better. And I hate to use the word accessibility, but in this case, the fact that there's just like no highlight around items, and in Fallout 3 and everything is gray on a gray background, it's visually hard to see some things. And I know it's supposed to be that way, but it's too much that way.
Damn.
One of the things they do is they have gravity and physics effects happening to every item in the world. So if you bump into like a cue ball, it will roll on the ground, when that is really just wasting resources, and it would make a lot of sense for that to not really be the case in its entirety, because you're adding realism there that nobody really expects or cares about. There is actually a shocking number of bottles on the ground that don't ever crush or turn into broken glass, where it would make a lot more sense to have made a system like that where you are specifically
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
just running a check to see if the player character is standing directly on anything made out of a texture of glass, then destroy that item and replace it with a broken glass item, and play a sound effect, and play that sound effect so that it attracts the attention of characters around you and breaks you out of the sneak stance. That would be a much more interesting concept than just wandering around a lot of dungeons and seeing bottles. I really went crazy and collected over like 100 empty Nuka-Cola bottles on what is basically a vague memory
is a drama
that
of life and death.
we might do something with that later
Oh, I could watch this all
in the quest.
day.
March on!
War is the most sacred act.
Right, 7.
It's a miracle.
But yeah, I feel like Fallout 4 and Skyrim probably do address some of these issues, so I do want to play Fallout 4 somewhat quickly, but I also want to try to squeeze in Ni no Kuni in between playing Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4. It's a lot of commitment, and frankly I haven't scheduled enough videos to be playing such a long running game. Alright, well, is there anything else to talk about as far as the accountability section? No. Fallout has been just taking up a ton of my time. Obviously, it would. One day this week will be Christmas, and I probably won't get anything done that day. I wouldn't be surprised if I barely get anything done even 2 or 3 days this week. Moving on, the big news is the winter sale has started on Steam. So here's your front page. You can claim a free mystery sticker, which I guess we'll get a random sticker. Get my sticker. So we've gotten the early bird. And then they immediately want you to go in the chat. Apparently they're introducing artist profiles, and then they have like autumn sale items still available with the points. They're still very much trying to promote these points to get away from any kind of marketable trade-in items. They're trying to get rid of the Steam market and de-emphasize it without just immediately shutting it down, which eventually they're going to do that. We can see we have a ton of points and really don't care about any of that. It's kind of crazy that this is the top banner when you would more expect to
Soul's not ripe yet.
you would more expect that you would have focused on the awards. Here they have browse by theme, and it seems like it is somewhat a randomized collection of themes in no particular order, not even specifically focused on me, because I've never like bought a VR game, for instance, or an MMO game. I watched a YouTube video talking about God games, and there was this one God game that looked very interesting, where you had to basically make commandments and control the people via commandments, and that looked very interesting. And then I went and looked at the Steam reviews, and it was like 50% positive, and well, I guess that's the problem inherently, is that I'm much more. I should listen to Steam reviews more than some random YouTuber talking about a game. Yes, even for games that are very much in the negative reviews, there probably are a few people that love it, but I certainly can't cover games and play games trying to appeal to the niche fandom or the diehards of a fandom. I need to try and play and cover games that would address the average player out there, the average person, is whatever that average person is.
To arms! There's a battle
And so Mob Rule and Steam reviews definitely told me I could not justify playing that game, which was kind of a shame, but also it probably means that the game in theory is cool, but in practical play sucks, which happens quite a bit.
Prepare to be boarded.
So here's the Steam Awards. It's very colorful imagery. I guess that's because this was autumn. They put the awards with the autumn sale, and now they're having us vote on the categories that we picked, or the nominees that we picked in autumn. So let's see, Game of the Year 2021. Your choices are Valheim, New World, Cyberpunk, Village, and Forza. My nomination was Village. Wow. We're getting trading cards, and they're telling us about trading cards even. That seems to be more interesting. Then the VR Game of the Year is having a separate one. Cooking Simulator VR, I think probably should win. Sniper Elite VR, like this one's mixed. This one's very popular. This one's mixed. This one's overwhelmingly possible. I Expect You to Die too. I don't even... Or Blair Witch VR. I'm gonna go with this. Notice how they've changed their thumbnail to say vote for us. That seems kind of sneaky and something Valve should consider at least admonishing people for doing and not encouraging that. Last thing we need is to see every game change their thumbnail on Steam so it says vote for us. Next category was the Labor of Love. The options were Dota 2, Terraria, Rust, No Man's Sky, and Apex Legends. So really this is all just about what do you think is your favorite game. And so I'm kind of torn between Rust and No Man's Sky. And I'll go with No Man's Sky as an underdog. It doesn't matter who you vote for, really. Well, in mass, I imagine it matters. Better with Friends. The options are It Takes Two, Crab Game. Notice that my nominations, whatever I picked, most of them are not winning. Back for Blood is mixed reviewed. Valheim, Halo Infinite, it probably is Better with Friends, but we'll go with It Takes Two. I suspect that might win, but it would be actually more interesting if it didn't win, and that was an indication of the split between like the video game awards, the Jeff Keighley awards, and actual players. Next you have Outstanding Visual Style. Psychonauts 2 was my nomination. Subnautica Below Zero, A Little Nightmares 2, Bright Memory Infinite, and Forza Horizon 5. We'll just go with that one. We might as well stick with what we voted for. Next we have Most Innovative Gameplay. Inscription was my nomination. 12 minutes I don't think really is that good of game. Mon Cage. Not a game I even had heard about, which is funny because, yeah, it's probably something I should have heard of. Deathloop and Loop Hero. We'll just stick with what we've got. Wouldn't be surprised if Loop Hero wins there. Notice how they've made special desaturated pictures for each of those. That's not particularly hard to do.
You're safe with me, Captain.
Next category, Best Game You Suck At. World War Z, Aftermath, Naraka Blade Point, Neo the Complete Edition, Ages of Empire 4, and Battlefield 2042. Very positive here with 20,000 reviews. Very positive with 18,000. Very positive for 71,000. I mean, you really should just pick like mob rule. You could very easily just hover over this and see who has the most reviews, and if they're very positive, who is most positively reviewed, and in your mind bounce those twos out. Next is best soundtrack, and you can see this one has changed their thumbnail to show the video game awards, or the game awards. It's just, I guess, called the game awards. Near Replicant, Galaxy of the Guardians, Persona 5 Strikers, Guilty Gear Strive, and Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai de Hinokami Chronicles, which I guess we'll probably want to pick an anime game, so I'm gonna pick this one. We've got some news potentially around Nier also, which would argue to
Lovely day for a fight.
to actually give the vote to Nier Replicant, but yeah, I don't think I'll do that.
Will not surrender.
Outstanding story-rich game, you have Life is Strange: True Colors,
Do something.
Cyberpunk 2077, Resident Evil Village, Days Gone, and Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
Setting reflectors to reflect.
I guess I'll go with Village. Sit back and relax. You have
Do something.
Unpacking, Potion Craft, Alchemist Simulator, Farming Simulator 22, Town Scoper, and Dork Romantic. It's almost a meme to pick Farming Simulator. Let's go with Unpacking. And that's that, pretty much. The thing here is apparently Nier is done, which I don't know if there is a satisfactory ending in the Nier series, since Nier Automata, I think, is the last story, or the latest story in that series. So unless there was something in the cell phone game that wrapped up everything in a nice bow, it to me seems like it is going to be left where it is. Maybe not with a ton of dangling plot holes or anything like that, but definitely a lack of quality.
Loyalty is ironclad. March on. Harder armor. Steel yourself. Loyalty is ironclad.
Guinea pig.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually
This under control.
a misunderstanding on my part, or maybe there is another Nier game in development, and that they are done with the development of that new game, and that is going to wrap up the Nier series.
My armor's been pierced.
Plus, this is a Japanese team basically saying Nier is done, when
Cut you down.
Japanese fandom in particular never let anything really die, and
Enemy or no.
like,
You did good.
it's not uncommon for people to say they're done and then come back and do it. In fact, it's not even a bad strategy. Say you're done with a series and that is the final in the series, final game of the series, and then come back 6-7 years later if you want to make another one and reevaluate then. If you had told me the Resident Evil 4 was the end of the Resident Evil series, or even Resident Evil 5 was the end of the series, that would have given them so much leeway to not make Resident Evil 6 and not just devolve into the really bad Resident Evil games. Alright. So from the front page now,
There's a battle underway.
you see a lot of the same old categories on sale. They're featuring specific franchises. Clearly, these things are paid product placements of some sort. Valve would be insane if it wasn't doing that. And even here, these are still some same old people. You're not going to see a lot different from sale to sale. Looks like the franchises are claiming some games are fairly highly discounted. This might be a slightly higher or new thing. Players you love these games. That's a different way of recontextualizing it. And if you ever look at like Netflix, they do the same thing also, where they're just showing you what they've got to offer, the things they want to promote, but they're trying to recontextualize it, make you think about it a different way, like repackage things and see if they can get you to buy things. And certainly if you're new to the concept, like them suggesting Myst is not wrong. It's on my wish list. I don't see... Some of these are fairly wrong though. I don't think I'd ever really want to play Call of Duty's Black Ops, sorry. If I was going to get around to that. It would be weird. But yeah. There is a limiting factor certainly. And then you have things like Borderlands 3 here that's saying it's $15, but in reality you would want to get the Game of the Year edition, and when you start to get the Game of the Year edition, that's when you start to really pay a lot. I'm not sure if I really want GTFO or not. I'd have to kind of investigate that. It's a co-op game, so no. They are doing trading cards for queues, discovery queues. So I don't know if you can get 3 trading cards. Looks like you probably can with the image of 3 by going through the discovery queue 3 times. They still want a lot of people to go through the discovery queues. For me personally, it doesn't really help that much. They're highlighting up to 75% and under $10. Both are basically what I do when I search my wish list, is look at what the deep discount percentages are versus what is the actual price, and consider games both in those categories. And then they're at this point just suggesting specific categories, one specific category of crime games and role-playing games. Well, 2 specific categories. But then they cut out from that and they now are suggesting popular new releases. Oh, here, this looks like an anime game. One makes it to the... One anime girl nude lewd game makes it to the front. That game series Creatures, and see, that's all they really want to promote. It's not even that much before you hit the fold. Actually is a sort of a god game, it turns out, and it is an older game. So yeah, I had not heard of it, but it was an old Interplay, I believe, god game, so might be something to consider there. So if we sort this by discount, we have by discount We Happy Few at $5.99. I'm still not sure I really want to buy Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition for $4 to just upgrade a game I should have gotten a free upgrade with. Plus, the Duke Nukem DLC, if it matters, is probably still going to be very expensive. Phantom Doctrine at $4 is probably not terrible, which is going to be about the same thing you could say for any game at all.
To me, your purse.
Oh, and the problem here is
Take the souls
if
of
I start to
millions that
go
rise.
really deep into shopping here, I'm going to not be able to cover the video game news. So I'm gonna have to be fairly careful. I kind of wish I could. What was in my shopping cart
Enemy
from
or
the
no, you did good.
the November sale was still in my shopping cart. Steam is kind of bad about resetting your shopping carts when there's not really a good reason to do that. Like, you could just leave everything there as a cookie. Easy enough, particularly when you're logged in. It still is definitely just going to be the same old, same old. A long list here of things that are 90% off. Then let's just reload the page and that'll get me back to the beginning. Yeah, I think what I'll want to do is actually, instead of showing the shopping now, I'll do it on my own free time. And we may come back on Friday and show what I picked, instead of trying to make it do something different. And then if we sort by price, there's some weirdness in that episode 1s of games that are free get priced at 0, even though the actual price of a lot of these games are much higher. We've got some 49-cent games that, you know, getting more games, it's not super useful. But I mean, what is really useful at this point, I have hundreds, if not nearly 1,000 games backlogged. I like having the opportunity to pick whatever I want to pick, but getting more cheap things doesn't help. Now, once I fully get the macro working and remove the burden of scheduling videos, playing smaller spotlights of games or just single episode playthroughs of games do make a lot of sense more at that point, but even at that, it's still going to take more time to schedule one video and set up that first episode of a video than it does to schedule 100 episodes of Fallout 3, for instance, because all the setup is up front, as is typical in anything called setup, that the work has to be done up front. But, you know, scrolling down here, we can see there's definitely some things under $1. So, and I am going to look to spend a little bit more money this sale than I normally would more recently, because I've skipped the November sale, I've skipped the Halloween sale, I skipped several sales in the previous years. I've been really holding back and just trying to not go crazy with it, and so there are some things, but what I may very well pick in shopping is games I specifically want to cover. And so to that point, I've had Danganronpa 2 here on my follow list, and I think people probably do want me to get this and be prepared to play it. Of course, they will then immediately want me also to play Danganronpa 3. So, I should just bite the bullet and spend $44 on the game. And then the Fallout Classics collection here, while it's on sale, to get Fallout Tactics, Brotherhood of Steel, and Fallout 2, just so we can spotlight these. Even though I didn't actually play Fallout 1, and probably wouldn't play either one of these, so spending basically $6 just to own games, which it's not crazy, but it is. No, it is a little crazy. Let's just be honest on that. Like, that's a little crazy YouTuber type thing to do. Right. So, Video Games Chronicles, as news, says PS4 and Xbox Series X stock will be on sale at GameStop stores on December 23rd, but they will only be available to GameStop Pro members, which may be different than some of the other memberships they offer. So I would definitely say check what membership, if any, you have. Make sure it is the right thing. Yeah, I heard about this game Moncage just like yesterday. Unique puzzle adventure game. So you tilt the cube and seemingly have to line up things. Well, it's rated overwhelmingly positive. It was on my follow list. So, let's see. Is it discounted right now? No. Can I go ahead and put it on the wish list? Yes. And that's all I really need to think about. This game, Icarus, is the discovery queue. So I'll need to go through that. And then Silence was this bundle here, was what I was thinking I was going to get. Art book, soundtrack. Yeah, it would have been so much nicer if you could just have a way of getting all of your shopping cart just to stay. Yeah. It probably wouldn't really affect the your server load that much. So here is the game, the Nier series Twitter feed, and it says Yokotaro said it here, Nier is finished, and then screaming sad face happy holidays from the Nier team. So this could also be a joke. It probably is a joke. Like, it really would suck if the Nier series ends kind of with Replicant, a remake of an old Nier series, because I just don't feel like the story ends well on that note. The Epic Games Store, by the way, is once again having troubles. 6 hours ago it's been resolved. Kind of like the worst time possible to have internet troubles as you're having a holiday sale. Epic is also giving away the daily games, and I'm not really grabbing many of them. Video Games Chronicles says FIFA 22 takes the Christmas #1 spot on UK physical games chart. And apparently FIFA has been the most series to take the #1 chart during Christmas. So the UK really, I mean, for as bad as FIFA sounds, it seems like it either has a big fandom regardless, or there's
Let us speak with more.
kind of a disconnect between the UK audience and the American audience around FIFA, which I believe that definitely.
Will not surrender.
It is kind of crazy to realize that EA, at some level, came from the seedlings of Bullfrog and the makers of Dungeon Keeper and the makers of like really interesting god games. Somehow became EA and somehow eventually just killed all of those games. Although, as much as I love Dungeon Keeper, really, if you look at it objectively, Dungeon Keeper 1 is about the only good Dungeon Keeper, and they only made Dungeon Keeper 1 and 2. So, like it's not like there was a long running series of success there.
Invention could be my claim to fame.
Dungeon Keeper 2 surprisingly sold poorly. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says Ghost of Tsushima's movie director says we're taking our time to do it right. The film is currently in pre-production. That's the right response, I suppose, always, is for almost anything. I didn't even know a Ghost of Tsushima game movie was in development. I probably have mentioned it or talked about an article and then just forgotten it. Apparently, a cyberpunk designer has responded to the lack of police chases in Cyberpunk, saying, quote, Elden Ring won't have them either. I don't think the Sonic or the Elden game, open world game, will have it, is the full quote. So it's not as snide as how it's been rewritten by the headline here, but it doesn't actually address what is probably a fairly valid complaint, in that there probably should be more chases happening.
Harder armor. Steel yourself. My loyalty is ironclad.
Let's see. Next, Video Games Chronicles says the original Xbox designer on online abuse, quote, this isn't a feature of Xbox Live we envisioned. Second quote, it's possible to clean up these environments. Apparently there was some kind of viral video of abuse. Seems like it's a Twitch streaming girl or video game streamer. Wouldn't really call her a thought, though. She looks very normal. She is doing the face cam, and honestly, I think there should be a site out there that just straight up bans face cams in general. Voiceover only dialogue. That's in part. That's what I choose to do, and I think that would be better. Also, she has like the inputs on her screen, which seems like a little unnecessary, but maybe it would help some people while playing a first-person shooter. A viral clip of a female player receiving sexist abuse during a game. Apparently this clip has been viewed over 400,000 times, and it shows Grenade Queen, I guess is her name. I haven't seen this. Yeah. Now, I haven't seen this clip, so I'm defending somebody potentially here that maybe did something different, but I will argue that the article here is doing a very bad job. They're saying this is sexist abuse, and then the quotes they use here is two unnamed teammates hurl abuse towards her, saying the game, quote, isn't for her, which is not sexist abuse, and arguably isn't even abuse, and that she should, quote, go play Valorant or something and get 2 kills, which that doesn't even make sense in abstract, which again, not sexist abuse. Let's see. Let's just throw out some sexist abuse comments we could say here as an example. If you had a teammate, and frankly, if you're on the same team of a game, I would think that would be your friends. So definitely different there. But if you had somebody throwing out sexist abuse to them, it'd be something like, maybe you'd be better at this game if you weren't so used to bleeding several days out of the month. That's sexist abuse. Or maybe you could hold the controller better if if you didn't have those giant knockers in front of your chest, getting in the way of your arms. That's sexist abuse. So we need to see the difference there. Like, in the abstract, these don't even sound like abusive things. They sound like they're helpful suggestions. And it's important not to just feed the narrative for no reason, or feed into like self-defeatism. It doesn't help the female gender one bit to just constantly pour in their ear the idea that that they're going to be abused in video games, and that they're going to be treated unfairly or any differently than anyone else's. I think everybody kind of gets a little abuse in online things. It's kind of just the growing up process. It is actually way better than it used to be, because before, people were kind of just hurling words. People were hurling fists. Like 100 years ago, like, there was just awful bullying and physical violence and sexual violence happening to every kid from every other kid, because parents didn't care. There was a lot of bad adults out there that were also being predators in that case. I would be way happier to have a kid playing online and having mean words thrown at them, and frankly them being so devastated by those mean words that they don't even know what to do, compared to them being on the streets, playing in a playground, and having people push them, punch them, like do all kinds of awful things. And often it's just kids don't know what's right or wrong at doing it, and sometimes those kids grow up to be adults that still don't know what is right or wrong. But there is definitely a danger in promoting the idea that misogyny is just this systematic instilled thing that will always exist and it will always affect you, and everything that ever happens to you that's negative is because of misogyny. It creates a self-defeatism. If Martin Luther King had preached the idea that racism is systematic and that people couldn't ever come together and racism would always exist and you can't rise up from that and you can't help people who have even been racist in the past grow and stop being racist, well, then you're really not going to help your community much that way. And I think particularly in the racism issue and in the sexism issue, that is not the message you want to send, and it is sadly sometimes the message that does get sent. Also, racism, I think systematic racism and slavery way better than people saying mean things on video games. I think arguably there's a lot of people of all genders that need to just develop a tough skin and toughen up, because if you're ever going to make it in the real world and in a working environment, people are going to say nasty things. And yeah, if I was a boss and somebody said something nasty and then the employee, the female employee, threw a hissy fit and said they were being sexist to them, I mean, you're feeding right into the sexist response there, which would be to fire them for being, for lack of a better term, a drama queen. Yeah, it's almost, you're almost helping create a catch-22 against yourself. So you need to make sure you've got the receipts, make sure you've got the accusations right. As a boss, if somebody was being sexist to my employee, I would definitely want to put a stop to it and make sure that never happened again. But if I had a manager as a boss and he is telling the employee to do the exact same work at the exact same quality as every other person and as the men employees, and then that employee comes back and cries sexism, I'm like, all right, well, she's going to be a problem. We need to get rid of her, because she's literally at that point that this fictional employee has signaled that no matter what happens, when we part, if we part on negative ways, she's going to claim sexism, or she's going to try and walk all over her manager in accusations in false accusations. Which that does get back to the like video game accusations of employees in the video game world, is that every accusation is being believed wholeheartedly against video game companies, because video game companies have created for themselves such a terrible environment and been shown to be guilty in so many cases. But there undoubtedly are some accusations that are being exaggerated, misconstrued, and straight up made. But I mean, that was the problem with the Channel Awesome thing that happened, is that Channel Awesome clearly had done some awful things to some employees, and then in those accusations they made it just an open Google document, and people then started adding very petty like gripes on top of very like legally actionable things that had been done, and it sucked the oxygen out of the room and made it very easy to just dismiss the legitimate complaints for all of the illegitimate complaints. And
allow me to bestow a criminal kiss.
But yeah, in this article, Yeah, the quotes here, as far as nasty things being said, this really feels like these are the quotes. These are the quotes they picked. They couldn't pick out worse quotes. So either Video Games Chronicles has done a terrible job writing this article, and they picked out the worst like quotes possible, or this is just Grenade Queen screaming and crying wolf on sexism, and one of the original Xbox designers buying into it left, right, and center. And that's the backside of the whole
Delightful.
Woke movement that anti-woke people hate, is that there seems to be far too many people who are given a microphone, at least, maybe not any real power, to promote ridiculous concepts and ideas when they clearly have left reality and left objectivity far behind. Like, I so wish that article was better written and it had real examples, because then it would be real news instead of, I mean, I hate to use the word fake news, but what else do you call something like that? Like, it's yellow journalism. It was written specifically to push a narrative. It's like just not of any real value to anyone. It's not saying anything, and we see this with Video Games Chronicle every now and then, and we see it a lot with GamesDeveloper.com, where they're just constantly making articles to push narratives when there's no actual news. And at this point, saying a video is viral because it has 400,000 views, it's probably not even an accurate description. 400,000 views is actually very little. Or getting a comment from somebody that doesn't even seem to work on Xbox anymore, doesn't seem like that's much of a value either. Inevitably, in any industry, somebody that doesn't work on a product anymore, that wants to get in the limelight, will say anything and everything. I feel like the creator of the Harry Potter series, for instance, is probably doing a lot of that, where she is definitely tweeting and trying to enrage people just so people keep talking about her. And always she succeeds very well. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says a new report claims Ubisoft is facing an exodus of developers. Low pay and creative frustration are allegedly causing the staff to leave. Interestingly enough about this, let's just take it as true that there is a large number, more than the average, of developers leaving Ubisoft. Which I could see it being creatively frustrating to work at Ubisoft and then effectively only be working on Assassin's Creed games or games like Assassin's Creed. And I could see it maybe paying low. But who knows if that's true. This also could be Ubisoft Canada offices versus Ubisoft France offices. What they're not citing here as a reason is because it's a hostile work environment, or because of the narrative that they tried to push for nearly a year straight. GameDeveloper.com tried to push for nearly a year straight that it was a like frat boys club. Like, arguably you could argue the opposite. like people could say it's being low pay, but they're leaving because of all of the news reporting and negative reporting that was put out there, and the hit pieces effectively that have been put out there. And see, this is another example where here you have somebody that says after more than 10 years, Dan Hay has announced he'll be pursuing a new chapter and leaving on November 12th. At least 5 of the top 25 credited people from the company's biggest 2021 game, Far Cry 6, are gone. Which that might mean something. It might just mean that they were done. Like, Far Cry 6 wasn't particularly well received, and they probably didn't want to work on another Far Cry game. Seems to be mostly the Montreal and Toronto studios. People move around though, so I mean, it's probably not much of a story there. And I would argue that unless you're getting over half of your employees leaving, it's not big news. Or, yeah, if exactly half or over half of your employees left, then it becomes kind of big news. Otherwise, it's just easily chalked up as the average movement. And individual stories are more interesting than group stories. So unless a significant number of people, more than I would say 5, left a company and all came out and said we're leaving for these reasons, then it really just feels like people are just moving on to different jobs. Yeah. I think to write an article like this, you either have to have people get on record and say, we're leaving for these reasons, and not try and group it between 2 different things and 2 different companies, or 2 different offices. And they kind of need to come out and be willing to be interviewed together. Or you should write individual stories and give each person their own spotlight. In fact, you probably push the same narrative even better if you did write individual stories and just had a long-running series of features where you interview people and say, why did you decide to leave, or where do you see yourself in your what kind of new job are you looking for? Kind of, yeah. Moving on, Ubisoft is playing an Assassin's Creed Origins 60 frames update, which, cool. Second Extinction is free at the Epic Games Store for 24 hours. That may not actually be still free. Assassin's Creed Valhalla's Yuletide Festival has been extended because some players can't access it. Yeah, I definitely am seeing a difference between Video Games Chronicles covering events, the Christmas events inside games, versus GameDeveloper.com basically taking the week off. Arguably, everybody should cover those Christmas events if there are Christmas events. That is the one thing you could be talking about right now if you need to talk about anything. Maybe you don't need to talk about anything and you should just say we're taking a week off. Xbox and Adidas have launched their 3rd and final sneaker collaboration. I don't know why it's going to be said to be final. Video Games Chronicle says titles added to the Xbox Game Pass in 2021 were reportedly worth over $6,300, which $15 a month for a year. You're talking, you're paying less than $200 for things that would have been valued up to $6,300. That's sounds like a really good deal. Arguably,
I shall save as
there's
many as I
a
have
slight difference there
wronged. You are
in
done
that
for. This conflict must end.
let's see.
Oh, light! You shall fall. Now then.
Like there's a slight difference there in that people with Xbox Game Pass are definitely being encouraged to be very flippant about games, and it's not, even when you look here, it's not like there's a lot of overlap between these different types of games. Maybe the average player would play 2 or 3 of these games. They're not going to play all 5 of these games. So you almost would want to divide this by 5 to say the games you actually want to play is probably only a fifth of this. Even at that, it does seem like it's a very good deal. The only thing is you don't get permanent ownership, so what is the value on permanent ownership to people? It would be the next question. Halo Infinite's Winter Contingency event launches today. Let's see. Play that.
This is definitive proof of God's authority.
And play that.
I'll need some num-num musk fruit. Snack on,
Gonna
friend.
have to fix myself up. Here I come.
Seems like I've got this relic goddess ability. Let's see. Warzone's Krampus has been nerfed following player complaints, according to Video Games Chronicles. Although this says Call of Duty Vanguard. Apparently it's been a controversial event in the past. Krampus's health has been reduced and he no longer spawns after the Force Circle. Whatever that means. Yeah, here's that article I was talking about. EA has had more UK Christmas #1 games than any publisher. Activision Blizzard also dominates the list. Ubisoft is going to continue to pursue NFTs despite the backlash, according to Video Games Chronicles. I kind of want to just burn through these articles. I think we'll try and have today be a shorter experience because honestly, I'm going to have to run to the bathroom. And either we're going to have to take a break or just call it a day. I think calling it a day might work. January's PlayStation Plus games have been revealed early. Deep Rock Galactic, Dirt 5, Persona 5 Strikers are headed to the service. EA reportedly canceled the Harry Potter MMO because it didn't think the brand had staying power. And on this, I would say I think I agree with them. I don't think Harry Potter has had staying power because while Fantastic Beasts succeeded, kind of the second one didn't. And I would say there's even a little bit of momentum that is lost.
Those wings have fallen to wretched.
In the first Fantastic Beast and the later
Shine forth.
the later what am I like the later Harry Potter game books and movies don't really have that staying power. Lego has done fairly decent with Harry Potter stuff, but they pretty much are just selling the same things over and over again. Mostly it is the first 2 or 3 books that are focused on as far as Harry Potter. All right.
The gods have favored me twice.
Should have just evolved that.
Let us conclude. Only one blessing? This'll be a breeze.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Apparently, the game would have featured physical goods mailed to the players. That sounds insane. And that feature would have definitely been canceled. Like, shipping kills almost every project. Yeah, I don't feel like there is an MMO out there where you'd be in the Harry Potter universe and you're just fighting the same spiders and trolls and snakes and other bad wizards. Like, unlike the Lord of the Rings series, which half of the creatures from Harry Potter are still the same creatures from the Lord of the Rings series and that Tolkien-esque fantasy. There's just not enough characters like that. You do better with using characters from like the Dungeons and Dragons series, which, by the way, it's not very video game related, but it does seem like Hasbro is just removing tons of character description and things they say people might find objectionable in the character descriptions of monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, and they're just going super woke and super pro censorship around it.
Power of mortality.
Wow, I actually won. But in all fairness, if you get this guy on the field, you pretty much are guaranteed to win.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
I would say you could probably make anything work. So, had they really cared about the Harry Potter. But then you definitely have the Harry Potter creator just constantly causing controversy. She's effectively trying to kill her own products in favor of, I don't know what the reason is. She probably just got a bad deal and isn't getting the royalties she thought she would from Warner Brothers movies, which I imagine made way more than her book sales did. It's also very possible she just wholeheartedly believes in her trans exclusionary radical feminist perspective, which that's an unfair term to use, but it's the term that is used. And it seems like she's become pushed to trolling, or she's just become a troll on her own. It's not really the best way to push a concept, because the turf concept is understandable if explained coolly and calmly, because it is the idea of being a feminist and biological females and supporting biological females without having transgendered people take over the entire community and support groups that were originally designed for biological females. Arguably, you could say, yes, there should be support groups for transgender people, and there should be support groups for feminism, but particularly the LGBTQ plus groups have tried to just squeeze all these minority groups together and support each other in a form of solidarity, but there isn't actually a form of solidarity there for a lot of people. And like, gay men don't really care too much about lesbians' plight or interact with lesbians on that level as far as support. And that gay men versus lesbians might have very different problems or different things that they want to focus on.
Prepare to face judgment.
And they may not want to be an ally to other people. But the problem is J.K. Rowling, like most TERFs, don't make that argument, or at least they're not given the microphone to make that argument cool and calmly better than even I tried to explain it there. And instead they just lead into a lot more of just slogan and repeating and mudslinging and just sounding like they're irate or
Punishment is a blessing in disguise.
angry, which the logical fallacy of the internet, first one to get angry loses, is something that a lot of people take as true, and it's easy to see where people would fall into that. Moving back to video games though. Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden is the latest free Epic Game Store, so this is probably also not available. Xbox Series X consoles are currently in stock at Best Buy also. So yeah, I guess if you wanted to brave the stores, you probably could get a Xbox 360. Probably not a PS4. I mean a PS5.
Questioning God's design is meaningless. The real battle begins. Neither heaven nor earth shall be your... Can you not comprehend?
Well, aren't you something?
Let's see. Let's cover some of these games. Here we have a game called September 28 Pizza, which looks like nothing. $1.69, English, Portuguese, Brazil. I opened all of these tabs before I disabled the ad blocker, so the ad blocker still should work unless I reload the page. Milk Cocoa looks like nothing. Free to play, bunch of languages.
The battlefield.
Bet to win looks like nothing. I suspect there won't be a ton of games this week. Boomerang Woman.
Stop!
One of the games we covered was one of these games that was censored for the Steam release versus the storefront direct sales storefront release. That being said, I'm not 100% sure if that is real censorship from the stance of Valve, or if it's just that company has chosen to censor it on Valve and then blame Valve for a censorship that isn't actually being implemented. It really just comes down to, were they specifically told in the background that they can't do certain things, or are they just assuming that they can't do some certain things? The Japanese in particular, and let's face it, most of the adult games are made by Japanese companies, tend to just assume something is forbidden and not actually ask or can double check.
My dear old home.
And there is a danger certainly in that if something is forbidden, you need to know it's forbidden years in advance while you're developing a game. Argonauts Agency is one of these resource management games. 354, English, French, German, and Russian. Let's cover news. Komatsu says Archetype Arcadia is coming to PC on January 24th in Japan. It's currently available for the PS4, 5, and Switch. This looks like a visual novel.
Must I persist?
Final Fantasy Pixel Remastered series, Final Fantasy VI, launches in February. They've been slowly releasing these remasters. I think that's probably what this article was talking about here also. Cosmic Break Gun and Slash launches December 23rd. It's a single-player hack-and-slash spin-off of Cosmic Break, which, yeah, I don't recognize a game called Cosmic Break. Looks maybe a little low polygon. Of course, with my blur effect on, it's kind of hard to tell. It doesn't look like much of a game, though. Just kind of an open, generic world, top-down hack-and-slash shooter. The big news, I suppose, today. Let's do this.
You crossed the line.
And then do this.
You've never heard anything like this.
Embracer Group, which is the parent company of THQ Nordic, has acquired Dark Horse, which I almost feel like Dark Horse is Dark Horse Comics, not a video game company. Digic, which Digic Pictures is the logo here. Perfect World Entertainment, which is a Chinese company, so that'll be interesting. Shiver Entertainment and Spot Film. Let's see. So, yeah, Dark Horse is a comics publishing and film and TV production. So, the Gearbox Entertainment Company, through its solely owned subsidiary of Embracer Group, is going to acquire 100% of Perfect World North America Corporation and Perfect World Publishing from Perfect World Europe. I wouldn't be surprised if the truth of the matter is that Perfect World has been the company that's been doing a lot of the programming for the Borderlands series. It is so common for companies to claim they're the sole creator of a game, but really to shop out the third parties and just not even crediting them. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Embracer Group acquired Gearbox just to realize, oh, actually these people are not actually the people working on this. So Perfect World Entertainment will be a subsidiary of Gearbox Entertainment Company.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
The world called, and I answered.
They've also bought Spot Film Network, which is an advertising-based video-on-demand channel network in Germany, located in Berlin. Saber Interactive has bought Digic Holdings, which is an anime studio founded an animation studio founded by Alex Robb and late Hollywood legend Andrew G. Vajna. So clearly Embracer Group is moving towards the idea of making, I don't know if it's direct-to-TV animated movies based on video game licenses they own, or just straight up live action movies. And then Saber Interactive is also acquiring Shiver Entertainment, which is only about 20 people. And they port platforms and genres. They just port games. So yeah, a lot of acquisitions there, but not so much of them actually even uniquely video game focused. Which at a certain level, maybe video game companies in general are just not going to be video game focused, and we're going to start to see video game companies try to spread out and replace movie companies that now are either dead or on the verge of death because of the pandemic and because of their own just terrible mismanagement. But yeah, that's not gonna work in my opinion very well. I think video game companies will fail as miserably as movie companies will fail as the budgets just get larger and larger and larger. The trend seems to definitely be the case where companies just want to work on more expensive projects, and until they're just promoting themselves in budget to the point of guaranteed failure. And yeah, why can't anybody just say enough is enough? It's an inherent flaw in capitalism, is that greed is the religion of capitalism, and it is openly preached and embraced by people in charge of businesses, when it would make so much sense for these companies to not allow themselves to become public companies in the first place, and just focus on making a good product and a decent return instead of starting down the path of selling shares, so that then the Embracer Group can just acquire them and
I'll make your taste buds quiver.
make this giant new THQ, which is going down the exact same path that the old THQ is going down, where they are just becoming a giant company that is going to make giant bets and eventually fail on the giant bet.
Stop!
Like, I don't think anybody at Embracer Group that worked at THQ learned their lesson. Probably because they didn't actually suffer anything from bankrupting THQ either. Like, bankruptcy for a corporation is nowhere as emotionally damaging as bankruptcy for an individual. Arguably, bankruptcy for an individual is not as bad as people think it is, and more people should go through bankruptcy. Also, though, a lot of people's major debt is student debt that can't be cleared in bankruptcy, which is ridiculous.
Let us write the first lines of
Moving on, back to video game news. Genosia for PC has been delayed to early 2022. So standard Japanese, we're going to announce things way too early and then delay them. Multi-Blood type Lumnia DLC character Dead Apostle Noel has been announced, which obviously it's an anime girl. So the only thing I guess I really have to say here, though, is I didn't know Multi-Blood type Lumnia was still making DLC. the new Telltale Games put out an end of 2021 update, talking about Wolf Among Us Season 2 going into pre-production in December of 2019. Still, they have nothing to announce there. Them releasing the Shadows mode, which really sucks for the Batman Telltale series, and then them announcing the Expanse for the Telltale series, which basically is to say they've not really done much this year. Like, they're either working in the background on The Wolf Among Us and have nothing to show. They've sold you a $10 visual shader that makes the Batman Telltale series look worse, in my opinion. And they've made a trailer for a Telltale game based on the Amazon series, The Expanse, which I was unable to get interested in enough to actually watch. That's really not a lot. In comparison, the other companies that acquired other parts of the old Telltale have done a much better job of not making press releases and promises, but instead just re-releasing slightly remastered widescreen versions, particularly of the Sam and Max Telltale series. And even though there was some like slight censorship and changes in the Sam and Max re-releases, that managed to not really create enough of a controversy, and just getting those games listed once again for purchase probably made them more money than making promises and not really having much to sell. Like, for this entire year, the new Telltale series, their only income would have been sales of old games that they still own, or sales of the Shadows mode, and that's it. And to potentially put out a letter to just confirm that you did one thing and made two promises is gotta be pretty ridiculous. Yeah, and I know that there are people that go to work and they really have nothing to show after a year of working at a job, but in the video game world, that's kind of crazy. Moving on, Gamatsu says Bravely Default 2 shipments and digital sales have topped 1 million. Which, okay. Let's see. Magatsu Barai demo launches December 23rd in Japan, which looks like a visual novel. PlayStation Store is giving away free Saphiric earrings, which I assume is for use in Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode Intermission, the new story content featuring Yuffie. So I guess check that out or grab that if you're interested. You know, we don't see a lot of that, and we should see more of that. More just free gifts during the Christmas season, just to try and be jolly, try to be nice to people. Seems kind of crazy that there isn't more of a focus there. The Epic Games Store is giving away games, obviously, but inside games, you barely see any news reporting of any rewards, probably because the rewards are pretty bad. Or maybe they just don't bother to put out any press releases. I know Christmas is not particularly that big of an event in Japan, and it's definitely not an event in many countries. It's not too hard to embrace Christmas and the concept of just generosity and joy and goodwill without calling it Christmas. You can easily just say season's greetings. You can easily have a secular Christmas if you want to have a secular Christmas event. Moving on, Gamatsu says, Oshirabu, waifus over husbandos, plus Love or Die has been announced for Switch, which I think might be 2 games. Yeah. Yeah, it's the first game and the sequel. And I assume they're, once again, visual novels. It's a lesbian romance visual novel, like wives, lesbians, I would assume, from the images and them both being in wedding dresses.
End of the road, eh?
Mean son of a gun, ain't you?
The real battle begins.
Only judgment, no escape.
On to the next experiment.
Moving on, the Famitsu review scores, issue 1726, are available. They give Critadel for the Switch 31 out of 40, and Halo Infinite 34 out of 40, which that's slightly higher than I thought they might give Halo. Hisho Same launches April 28th in Japan, which is probably some kind of shoot 'em up game if I was to guess. Yep, it looks like it's a old shoot 'em up game, maybe with some other gameplay mechanics also. Let's see. Aleste branch launches in early 2022 in Japan, according to Gamatsu. Short new trailers released. This is the first I've heard of this game, so I don't know what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it... Yep, it's another shoot 'em up game. They really do put out a lot of shoot 'em up games. I don't know if there's that much fandom really around shoot 'em up games, or whether they are just fairly easy games to make. Nights in the Nightmare remaster has been delayed to spring of 2022. This is also a game I don't recognize. So yeah, still a lot of games getting announced and then delayed, and I'm only getting either the announcement or the delay. Usually I get the delay, I think. A romance visual novel called Chigao is coming to PS4 in Japan. It's currently available for PC. So, is it the same game in 2 different covers? I think probably so. This is probably a reversible cover because there's a decent amount of skin showing in these bikinis, where even in Japan, PS4 games seem to be getting held to some limitations as far as their packaging. I didn't get the full story, but there definitely was an attempt to say that PlayStation was trying to embrace indies again, somewhat. The new PlayStation of California. I'll believe it when I see it, I suppose. And we'll see what indie games get supported and embraced versus which indie game companies get thrown to the side of the road. The romance visual novel Kiskara Hajamaru Gairu no Koi Kurumi no Uwasa to Honto no Kimuchi is coming to PS4 April 28th. I don't think I pronounced that anywhere as good as I could. This looks like another romance visual novel. And interesting, like, different variants of, I guess, different reversible covers or reversible inserts. Keep on playing. I'm gonna lose momentum here fairly quickly. Bandai Namco has trademarked Colonia Fantasy Reverie series in Canada, while trademarks hint at upcoming remasters. I don't recognize this game, but it... Colonia Fantasy Reverie. Yeah, I don't recognize that name. Weird West has been delayed to March 31st, no longer due out January 11th, which that's a relatively short delay of just a month. Dragon Quest X Offline has detailed the Eltona content in Rakarin Island, which, okay. I don't think I'd be playing the Dragon Quest online game ever though, or any online game if I can avoid it. And then I wanted to point this out, but I don't know if I really am gonna talk about this. Like, so GameDeveloper.com has put out several features, starting off with like just the best top 10 games that they picked. And I think we may have even talked about this on Monday. And you would think that that would be that, particularly if they're just going to take the week off. They do a top 10 out of the year. Arguably, you might even start 10 days earlier and just do a top 10 that way. You could probably do like a 12 days of Christmas and do the top 12 games or top 15 or top 30 games of December of the year in December. Just schedule things out to put out a new article every single day and take more time off if you want it. But then they did put out some other articles, like the social app Rec Room somehow raised $145 million, which I think I've heard of Rec Room, but if this is what it looks like, I'm shocked. And then they have this other best of 2021 top 5 games from specific people instead of a combined game of the year. So Chris Kerr, being a news editor, has his own separate top 5, which is really doing things backwards here. You shouldn't do the individual top 5s or top 10s. And yeah, he's talking about games, but why do I care about this guy's opinion as far as the top games of the year, since I don't even know who he is? Like, GameDeveloper.com does not really work hard to make you recognize one person's review versus another. Arguably, the websites should just have like either a very giant picture of the person who wrote different articles or entirely different themes. Like, arguably, instead of GameDeveloper.com, there should just be individual people with their own individual websites. That's what the internet was supposed to be, and the corporations have basically commoditized everything, so people are only going to 4 or 5 websites on an average monthly basis, just to Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, if you're going to buy anything. And the smaller websites are pretty much afterthoughts. But particularly for opinion journalism or news reporting, the individual matters a lot more than, or should matter a lot more than the conglomerate behind it. Of course, the conglomerate behind news reporting doesn't want that to be the case.
You're done for.
Belief is bow your head.
And then they have same top 5, this time from Holly Green, which is a community editor or coordinator, so not even a news reporter in this case, and they're just giving a different list of 5 games with seemingly very little overlap or no overlap. Then game developer also has the same article about Embracer Group acquiring a bunch of companies. So they are doing something. Then we had already talked about this one written by the editor-in-chief, where a report says Ubisoft is enduring a mass exodus without really giving enough details or evidence to prove that accusation.
You've never heard anything like this.
Time to go, lickety swift.
And then their final article for today is that a judge has formally denied the Department of Fair Employment and Housing's request to intervene in the Activision Blizzard settlement with the Equal Employment Opportunity Council, or whatever the EEOC stands for. A lot of initialisms, frankly. And like the EEOC is a federal agency versus the state agencies, the DFEH. And yeah, inherently the federal government always trumps the state government, and yet in the United States people seem to still think and make claims that, or try to make, people in politics even try to make the claims that the state government's isn't getting trumped. Now you could get into deeper arguments about interstate commerce clauses and how the Constitution gives all rights to the federal government for all interstate commerce or state-to-state interactions, which is oddly the basis for why federal government trumps state government. But you can kind of just fall back to an even easier stance of the Civil War in itself. Like, might effectively makes right in politics and in running a country, and the federal government will always win against any state, or probably even any groups of states. It would be an interesting thought, certainly, if all 50 of the United States tried to overturn the federal government running the military still probably would win and put down, I don't even know what you would call that. That would be just like this new civil war. Unless you can convince enough of the people in the military to not obey orders. It would have to be a fairly weird situation, certainly. Alright, well, we've got some games still on Steam, so I should close all of these if we can. Break Through the Illusion is a top-down twin-stick shooter, $7.19 English and Chinese. Solar Cage looks like nothing of interest. It's free, English, allegedly full audio. Moltres looks like nothing of interest. Maybe a multiplayer Tetris for 99 cents. Nope, not even multiplayer. So no to that. Here we have something called Mark's Life, where there might be something to this, but it looks pretty blurry. I may have to put this on the fall list. $3.99, several languages. although some languages are just subtitle supported and not interface supported, which is weird. It's being compared to the Cat Lady, and it kind of looks like the Cat Lady, so I'll put it on the fall list. I did like the first Cat Lady game. Arguably the prequel to the Cat Lady that came out before feels a little bit different. Maybe you should play that one first, and then the third game in the series feels a little bit different too. I wouldn't be surprised if I was just in a specific mindset or mood when I played the Cat Lady, and that caused me to like it a lot more than the other two. And yeah, that sometimes happens. There might be one game in a series worth playing, and the other two may not be really worth it. Here we have something called Night Runaway, which looks like nothing. $5.99 English Russian. Here we have Escape the Room, which, yeah, I don't think there's enough here. It doesn't really even feel like it is an Escape the Room game, so much as it just kind of feels like a top-down kind of RPG style game. $5.99, bunch of languages. I really should just not bother to play this at all. Let's see if I get some quick disconnects. Here we have a Red Cap Zombie Hunter game, which, yeah, looks like nothing. Doesn't look polished. $14.99, way too expensive. English and Spanish. Here we have Dinosaur Race, which again looks like garbage. $5.99 English and Russian. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these games are coming out right now, trying to get into the sale or get some sales because of the winter sale. Here we have something called Pog 6, which looks awful. $1.19, bunch of languages bundled together with 5 other games for $3.69. I think there probably is a false thought in the idea that if you underpriced your game really low and then you were money laundering through that game, you wouldn't get caught. I just don't think that's the case at all. Like, I think if you're money laundering and you have 1,000 transactions for $1 versus one transaction, or versus 100 transactions for $10, I think it's somewhat easy to track that either way if both transactions are on Steam and just through the banking system. And if I won't, for some reason, needed to actually launder money, I would imagine what you would want to do is not do it through some service like Steam, but do it through some local business that's not established. It would be fairly easy to, for small amounts of money, to start a chicken restaurant, for instance, and launder money through a chicken restaurant where the accounting is iffy and it's done on paper and through barbaric systems.
Let us pierce the twilight light here.
Versus everything just being in a nice little database on Valve's front that they could hand over to authorities very easily, and everything being done online, so it's fairly easy to track.
Who will be my victim today? Are you worth your weight in gold?
Cast his blades in the east. March on. This'll shing.
But I guess it doesn't matter whether it's effective or not, as much as it doesn't feel like it's effective. because that will just keep people trying. Here we have a game on Steam called Item Synthesis and Dungeon Exploration, which looks like a garbage Chinese game. $6.99. And in a country like China, selling a game for 99 cents may be just legitimately profitable, where in the United States selling a game for 99 cents probably isn't profitable. Here we have a hidden object game, Mystical Riddles Snowy Peak Hotel Collector's Edition for $13.99. Here we have a game called Paper Enchantress, which looks like a maybe Russian visual novel. Doesn't look terrible, but it's free to play in early access and Russian only. Here we have the Happy Dismissal Town, which looks like garbage. $7.99 English and French. We have something called Neon Horizon Eclipse, which looks a little too brightly neon for its own good, and looks like it's almost trying to be a Plants vs. Zombies but in 3D. That doesn't sound awful. $6.29 third-party EULA, English, Russian, and Spanish. I'll give this a follow. It probably will disappoint me, but I'll give it a try.
He's feeling hungry.
Let's see, next we have Industry VR Trainer Confined Space Entry, which feels like maybe it's supposed to be more of an educational thing than it really is. And it doesn't look particularly great. $199 for VR. Yep. It definitely feels like you're trying to sell this as some kind of training software. Which, yeah, I guess if you're working in an oil field or something, paying $199 to train somebody might make some sense, but probably not. It's probably better just to have that kind of training in a fake built up facility / lab, or in any other number of ways. You might just teach from a book, you might just get on site training. Next we have a game on Steam called In Next Life. I kind of like this art style. It feels like it's a slightly more zoomed in city sim real-time strategy game. Maybe even a God game for... I don't really use the God game description much, but there's a couple of them where it kind of would make sense. Problem here is it's an MMO online co-op game only, so there's no single player here. And while it does look interesting visually with a different art style, this once again highlights where you can try some different art styles and you have a chance of succeeding. Yeah, there's not really a game here to play, and the heads-up interface definitely needs a little bit more polish. I feel like, particularly this week, Valve has bent over backwards to undercut what I've been seeing as far as adult games, and particularly anime adult games, being held off and not released on the weekend. But it is also Christmas, so it's not super surprising that that would be the case, because they probably don't want lewd anime games coming out on December 25th, 26th. So maybe they're releasing some things early today. Christmas celebration with Sakuya Izayoi seems to be slightly lewd, but it doesn't seem to be tagged with any nudity. It doesn't have a DLC. It's English only. There's no mature content filtering. So even though it looks like one of those games, it kind of feels like this is more a Western game, just copying the tropes of a Japanese visual novel, which still looks way better than Asteroid clones like Asteroid Voice here. Early access for no reason, $1.99, English only. We have one called Yoko and Akuma Menace, which looks like it's a top-down hack and slash, maybe with some Bomberman elements or puzzle elements, maze elements, dungeon crawl elements. $12.74 is fairly expensive. Bunch of languages, but once again, none of them actually Japanese. So a Western game trying to copy the tropes of a Japanese game or look like a Japanese game, although fairly obvious this isn't actually a Japanese game.
Thunder roars like a beast from the void.
Is unwelcome.
You're weak.
So yeah, no for that game. Here we have something called Present Canon Rebirth, which looks like it's a VR game where you shoot presents from Santa's sleigh. So an on-rail shooter as Santa shooting presents.
Enemy or
Not the worst thought ever. It's free, it's English only. It's not implemented particularly well here, but it's not the worst thought. Here we have something called J. Schilling's Edge of Chaos, which looks like it's just a text-based visual novel, or just text-based game novel at that point. $4.49, English only. Here we have something called Tiny Stories Santa's Closes, which is a point-and-click adventure game with some point. And I guess I'm a sucker still for point-and-click adventure games, so I'll put this on the follow list. It's free, English and French.
There's a battle underway.
It does kind of feel like more Christmas games are coming out this year versus last. Here we have something called Bear Adventures 2, which looks like it's an attempt at a 3D platformer. It might be a bit too much of an asset flip, or it might just be too much of a Banjo-Kazooie 1 style game which honestly I don't think Banjo-Kazooie 1 was ever that great of a game. This does not look good in the sense that the bear himself doesn't look good. So even though the environments and the platforms look rather great, the actual character you're playing as just sticks out like a sore thumb as an asset flip 3D model. So I think I have to say no to this because it just looks pretty bad. $4.39 is, when did this game come out? October 23rd in 2021. They're releasing games just a couple months apart. I'm starting to wonder if perhaps Valve is limiting the release schedule and forcing people to wait like a month or even two before they can release another game, at least on Steam Direct. Like, which Valve should be doing that, definitely, but I haven't seen a lot of indication that that has been the case. We'll just have to wait and see if we ever see a case of somebody putting out 4 or 5 games all in the same day or same week again.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
One of the things about how terribly Valve is run is I wouldn't be surprised if there are at least a couple of people that work at Valve that are maintaining their employment directly, and probably being told that they're only maintaining their employment directly because they are approving Steam Direct games, and that is making like a pathetically small amount of income for them, like $100 if they for every game they approve. If they approve 100 games in a day, then they might keep themselves employed for another week or so. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are programmers and people that could be working on something like a Half-Life 3 theoretically, but instead are constantly getting moved over to working on Steam Direct and things that they're way overqualified for, just to show some financial income coming in based on their work. Which that's really no way to run a video game company, because it is so incredibly short-sighted. And the whole, if you're not making me money, you're costing me money attitude generally doesn't work in any business, but in video games that's pretty crazy. I definitely have known people that are incredibly short-sighted and only want to work on parts of a job or work jobs in general that are so directly and obviously making profit that they don't see the value in the back end. If you watch Bar Rescue, you see that a lot, where the managers are all about like watering down drinks or getting cheaper liquor, but when it comes to like cleaning the kitchen or training the employees or getting supplies that are needed, that they all of a sudden don't care about that and disappear, because that doesn't directly in their mind make them money, when in reality it totally makes people money. In bars in particular, a filthy kitchen makes bad food, and a bad work environment. Watered down liquor loses you customers in the long run. You don't get that repeat business. And a bar experience is in particular supposed to be a somewhat high quality, classy experience. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that on Bar Rescue. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Oda, which I don't think there's enough of a game here. It seems like you're maybe just shooting things through lasers to activate switches and triggers, avoiding a few robots. It's kind of a puzzle platforming game, I think. But yeah, I don't see a lot there. $3.49, English, German, Russian, and Chinese. Here we have a game called Marble Computing, which I have been wasting a lot of mental energy thinking about, like, could you make a computer using gears? Could you make a computer using physical things instead of transistors? Like, if you just somehow teleported yourself back in time, could you make a computer? And to a certain extent, I think you could. You could make a computer kind of with water, and using specific amounts of water to trigger the Galileo greedy cups or something like that, so that when 2 units of water are added together, it rolls over a number. But it would be a giant thing. And arguably, if you're going to build a computer with gears, you probably should think more on the level of building something that has frequencies like a quantum computer. I don't understand quantum computing enough to really even begin to start down that path, but I think if you thought of a gear as having a frequency in the same way that a quantum bit has a frequency, or a percentage chance of it being having a certain frequency, then something from that new way of thinking and creating technology probably could be applied to gears and mechanical things better than binary 1 and 2, which there really doesn't seem like there's been any way to easily make a binary type computer using gears and mechanics. There's probably ways you could do it, but it would just get really complicated really fast. And yeah. But I've been wasting a lot of time thinking about that for no real reason. Meanwhile, real projects that I would actually even start to try to embrace with the part shortage are kind of limiting me, which is fine. I don't need another project right now. I can work on some of the old projects that have been backburnered. But yeah, looking at marble computing here, if this was visually polished a little bit better, I might have been willing to consider this. Because like marbles, you can kind of make a computing system here. But see, as they have these like wires reading the signals, then you're getting back into the form of digital. And inherently, if you were to try to build a marble computer, it would get very complicated very fast. And marbles mostly work by going downward, so you're going to have to get over that hurdle fairly quickly and have a system that moves the marbles back up to the top.
Too slow.
But yeah, I did see a marble run binary counter, but it's pretty big. Just to get 3 bits, you're talking, probably 18 inches wide and 6 inches tall. Just for 3 bits. So you'd have to, I mean, even if you try to scale things down quite a bit, you'd still have to work on it quite a lot. Regardless, I'm gonna skip marble computing. I'm also probably gonna skip Space Escape VR. $11.99 VR, German only. Same is probably true for Zombie Quest. I'd say the colorful items looked good, but the actual screenshots here look bad. Like, all these screenshots look bad except for this one, which looks kind of interesting, and this one, which looks kind of interesting, but then this whole part looks awful. So, yeah. $19.99 is also way too expensive. Modern Game Tycoon, yet another tycoon game we can immediately dismiss. $13.99, bunch of languages. Sunny Place. Looks like it's maybe a game. I think though this is probably a socializing game. Like an MMO more than an actual interactive single player experience. $5.94. Definitely feels asset flippy. Definitely feels like it's kind of all over the place because we're seeing a racing game experience now, and then we're seeing kind of a co-op experience now. Yeah, I don't think there's a real game here. Here we have something called Tichu. I don't recognize it. Looks like it's some kind of game. Card game. $15.99. Online PvP. Doesn't look visually polished. I feel like at this point I should probably buy Tabletop Simulator for $10 just so I never have to say the word Tabletop Simulator ever again. That would save me a lot of breath. Here we have an Endless Zombie Weekend, which is clearly just a low effort tower defense game. They're saying it's a clicker. $6.29 English and Russian. A lot of zombie games for Christmas, but we always get a lot of zombie games. Here we have something called The Troop, which doesn't look like anything I'd want to play. Early access $39.99 English, allegedly full audio.
I bring you the stars to make a wish come true.
Alright, we see the beginning of the end here. Good. Here we have a game on Steam called Wave Jumper, which looks like garbage. Really wish I could get through all the news this fast, always. English, allegedly full audio, that's a no. Here we have a game called Adventure Rush. Now, here we are in a scenario where they've gone widescreen, but they're going with the green Game Boy visual art style. But it's moving fairly fast as a side-scroll, like, hack-and-slash shooter. I feel like there might actually be something to this. Like, I still kind of hate the art style. It's $8.99, several languages. But, let's see, shoot 'em up elements. And different characters. I guess you probably can grind through it, and as you defeat, level up a character, then you can play as the next character. In a funny way, this trailer looks great, whereas these static images are not going to really show how fast that game moves. This is kind of a great way also to, if you don't have it, if you're colorblind, if you don't have a colorist for some reason, you can make a game like this. You can make relatively small numbers of characters and icons and still make a rush game that shows off what you could create without having to so much worry about the things you couldn't create. This one. This one, and this one. And
No one gets
that
past
one.
me. Ah! Too slow.
And that one.
Die, creep.
That one.
Too slow.
So, you refuse to listen.
This will be the last game we also play, I think. Here we have Pixel Game Maker Series, Medium Not, which I don't think I'm going to approve anything with Pixel Game Maker Series in the front of its name.
Enemy or no.
Which kind of sucks because some of these screenshots don't look awful. $13.49 English and Japanese. We have a game called Creator's Asteroid, which looks like garbage. $3.39 English. Here we have a visual novel dating sim game that's either in Chinese or Japanese. Interesting. So maybe this anime girl is not a potential romance interest. If that is the case, then there's literally only one female on the screenshot. Otherwise, she looks fairly young, fairly short compared to the guy. Looks like a young outfit, but what is allowed, what isn't allowed, we've never really been able to figure that out. $1.59 Chinese only. Probably doesn't have any mature content. No, it says nudity and sexual content, general mature content is in here. Well, geez. If they are allowing characters to be drawn at this height in this kind of outfit, and then they're romantic things, and they can just do the standard all characters are 18 years or older spiel, then Valve is being a lot more lenient than it felt like they were being. Like, it is really ridiculous if it literally is just their rule that they can't be in school outfits. And that's the only limitation. But maybe that was the only rule anybody could agree upon, and the crazy libertarian nature of Valve left it in limbo as far as any other rules. Here we have a game called, I can't even pronounce this word over here, Epsijosion Dodgeball Training. Doesn't matter, it looks like absolute garbage. Looks like an old like CGA game. $2.99, bunch of languages. Here we have a game called DVR Simulator, which I don't know what they mean by DVR. Drone virtual reality. Because DVR means digital video recorder to most people. Another drone simulating game, which at this point I should just reject them all instead of keeping them. Well, this one doesn't require VR. $8.49, English and French. I'll give this a follow because maybe this will be the one drone game that actually turns out to be good and playable because it's not requiring VR. Then here we have Fly to Love. So let me just make sure all of this is YouTube family friendly, which it probably isn't. No, these are pretty risque. Screenshots. Again, they seem to be letting the adult games out early to get away from Christmas. Fly to Love looks like it is just literally a Flappy Bird game with anime lewd girl nudity added to it to try and sell it. It looks pretty low quality as a game. $1.39, several languages. Yeah, it actually doesn't even have any nudity in it by its own description. Just a lot of lewd poses, but no nudes. Which I would kind of believe that. That tends to be the case. If you see nude imagery in the screenshots, then you expect nude content. But if you see lewd imagery in the screenshots, then you expect to only ever see lewd content. Next we have Fish Story Gourmet Puzzle. That was also a prime example of a game that really just shouldn't have been allowed on Valve on Steam anyways. It is so obviously a garbage game. A Flappy Bird clone. This is just a match 3 game. Nothing there of interest. Rescue Team Power Eaters. It's another city management game. We're getting quite a lot of these. $5.94 English, German, Russian. Should be seeing maybe one of these a day, and we're seeing 2 or 3 over the course of a couple of days, which maybe is still too much. Maybe we should only be seeing 1 a week. Here we have Passengers of Execution, which doesn't look like anything. But I don't know if I want to really dismiss it quite yet. English and Turkish. I'll give it a follow and be generous. I've been burning through games, so I want to be careful. Here you have a game where it's literally just this one scene and you have to communicate through Morse code. And then break a code from 1919. I feel like the Morse code part of that would probably be too difficult for me. It's English, it's a $4.19. I'm going to give this a follow because it's an intriguing challenge that I very well might fail at. The problem is the how long and how fast the Morse code would be going. Because if it's just like real fast, ... dash dash ... and I can't tell the difference between a dot and a dash, or I can't write it down fast enough, that would be a problem. But if it's just like, oh, actually everything just automatically gets written down to you, and so you know for a fact what's a dot and what's a dash, and then you just have to compare it to a chart, which this may be the chart there, to get a letter, and then once you have that letter, you then have to compare it to another code to get the right letter. That's something I could do. Next we have a game on Steam called Attraction, which again, widescreen Game Boy game, doesn't look awful. Maybe I'm being a little bit more generous on the Game Boy looking games these days. Looks like a Metroidvania game. I will say this game, even though it does have several different colors, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of enemies running around. I don't know if you have to have enemies in a Metroidvania game, but I would suspect you should. English full audio, $2.99. We'll give that a follow. Next we have yet another drone game, which I think we could possibly dismiss this one, but there's not really a good explanation why. I would dismiss one over there. $7.49 English only. This one doesn't require VR at all. Guess I have to put it on the follow list. Like, at some point I'm just gonna have to have a come to Jesus moment and say I just don't care about drone games, and most people I don't think do. You have something called Worldwide Hack, which looks like it's a hacking game but a massive multiplayer. Early access, single player MMO, $16.99. Third party EULA, English, allegedly full audio. Wouldn't be surprised if somebody tries at some point to make a game that is a hacking MMO and you're actually hacking for them and you don't realize that you're doing that. I want to follow this and see what people have to say on it, but I probably wouldn't play it. Like, I'd be very concerned about playing any kind of hacking minigame that connects to the internet and then is taking what I'm doing and potentially using it somewhere else, as maybe at some point in the future. Here we have a game called Twin Ruin, which looks like a decent looking top-down twin stick shooter game compared to so many bad looking bullet hell top-down twin stick shooters. It's $6.49 English full audio. I'll give that a follow. We have about 10 more tabs. We have a game called Jane the Reaper, which definitely looks like it is just an asset flip game. Yeah. Looks like it's a beat 'em up game, but it also kind of feels like it might be controlled with the keyboard only. It seems like that's the case. Not enough visual polish, enough variety in what you're doing. And while me personally, or just people in general, may get excited seeing a skirt or seeing some midriff or just an interesting 3D model, the real, like, we all need to learn to not fall for such base trickery. This is a free-to-play game. English, allegedly full audio, early access. Seems to have like no way to monetize itself, so I don't even know why you would bother to put this on Steam, unless you're just trying to get other people to buy your other free-to-play game, which has like one user review from 2019. And I guess at a certain point I could see why people would be desperate just to get somebody's attention. Like, here you have an early access game from 2019. One person's reviewed it and not even really liked it. Next we have a game called Mission Critical Foresight, which sounds like it's probably a demo for a different game, but also doesn't look like anything that interesting. I really do wonder, as I'm playing Fallout 3, whether Starlink being in space would actually have any appeal or not for a game, or if we find that it being set in space means there's just a whole lot of nothing happening. Next we have Legends of Heroes Sin no Kisekai 4, the end of Saga, which I guess would be the end of Scarlet Grace, if that's what they mean. I don't know if Saga, Scarlet Grace, is connected to Legends of Heroes, or if this is just a different saga. Well, this definitely looks like a JRPG with a lot of people in it. $40.49 Japanese full audio, but no English support. So maybe we'll get English support later on. But I think it is also probably worth considering that if the Legends of Heroes series never got English support for what may be the last game in the series, that makes a good excuse to never play the Legend of Heroes series. Next we have Legend of Heroes Zero no Kisekai Kai, which feels very much like a mobile phone port. English also not supported there. $31.49 Japanese full audio, which I guess I'll put that on the follow list too, although it's probably pretty easy to dismiss this. I wouldn't be surprised if these are games that came out very recently and are just being ported fairly quickly, or if they are mobile, or if this is a mobile game that came out a couple years ago and then they shut down support for it on iOS because of they just didn't want to support iOS or weren't getting any sales there. Could be any reason, really. Here we have another shoot 'em up game, TC Strikers S4, $4.99 English and Japanese. Here we have a game called Paunch 2, which clearly is a joke game. But oddly, in this video, you're seeing people run around, but you're not seeing them actually punch each other, which would be what I would assume the goal of the game would be, is to beat up people. But instead, it seems like you're just picking up these items and throwing them. Well, whatever this game is, we can see it's already mixed reviewed as a free-to-play game with a whole bunch of DLC on it and online PvP. Here we have something called the Expedition, which looks like a survival game. Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, Fallout and Skyrim will also, unfortunately, led the beginning of the idea of creating survival games, and there's now a whole lot more competition to make something like Fallout or Skyrim stand out from your average survival game when you're kind of doing the same thing. Here we have Zovid-19 Remake, which looks like it suffers from dark screenshot syndrome. $2.59 English, Portuguese, Brazil. We can immediately dismiss this. About 5 more tabs now. Here we have something called Intrarealism Rebuild, which just looks like a bunch of shapes. Probably a rhythm game, if I was to guess. Something that I don't think I would really want to play. Seems like you can possibly make your own musical game, and they have a make your own background feature, it seems, too, because this is the hallway from PT. but it seems like you also have to play it completely with 100% accuracy, which I don't agree with that idea at all. And basically, you're just making your own game here. This is really just a visualizer, visualizing your own music, your own background. Early access $1.79, then items available on sale. This concept needs to go away, really. English only. For as much as it seems like Valve is trying to get rid of the marketplace, the idea that you can sell items in-game is kind of crazy. Here we have Beyond the Board, DTDA game. Seems to be some combination of several different games. It looks like it's all over the place. Maybe it is a collection of different Beyond the Board allows you to play mini games and 2 different board games, Apogee and Light Hunters. So it is just like a couple different games. Well, I guess I'll put it on the follow list, but I feel like that's not anywhere close to enough. English full audio, DTDA. Also put out a game called Beyond Two Cities, Stonemeyer Games, which nobody's really played. Here we have something called Aim Lab VR, which looks like garbage. That's not too bad as far as the shooting game, but everything else looks bad. It's free, so I guess the price is right. English only. Here we have I'm on Observation Duty 4, which I feel like I'm on Observation Duty 3 came out just a few weeks ago. November 13th, 2020. So a year ago, actually. But yeah, it doesn't look like anything of value. Here we have a game called Rogue Fable 3, which looks interesting. This is like the closest to an RPG Maker game we've even seen today. $6.99. Have we finally begun to see the end of RPG Maker games? We have a prologue game we can dismiss. We would also dismiss it because it looks like it's just text only. Free, English only. And then we have Lobster Game, which is clearly just a Squid Game clone, which so far so good. We haven't seen a ton of those types of games. Whereas it felt like we would have seen a lot of Squid Games. I feel like when people got to the end of Squid Game, they probably lost a lot of momentum. So maybe we won't see so many of those. Yes, Twitter is suggesting to me a Twitter account called Steam Games PC, which gives away free Steam games. I wonder how often it does that, and honestly it's not worth your time, I imagine, because they'll put out like one Steam code, and unless they're going to DM and direct message the Steam game keys to random people that follow them, which then would never prove that they actually give any keys away at all, it will just be bots effectively always grabbing the Steam codes, regardless if they put out 100 copies of keys or 1,000. It just doesn't matter. Alright, so now I'm going through my Twitter feeds to see if any new news has happened in the last 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it seems like the answer is going to probably be no, which is good, so I can spend the rest of this day just shopping, possibly trying to get Shadowverse to get some of these daily quests done, if I can do that easily. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go insanely crazy with shopping. I'm not planning on spending like $600, but yeah, 3, even 4. Maybe I'll struggle to spend even 300. Like, there is some furniture I've been meaning to buy also, so that's gonna be fairly expensive. So I also don't want to like spend too much. One of the things, okay, Bethesda is having a holiday sale, but I suspect it's on their own storefront in the Bethesda launcher. Yeah, one of the things that Steam has really allowed people to do here is create their own special sales pages where they can push fans of their content to go to see those specific games on sale, instead of trying to keep everybody looking at the main front page of Steam. Apparently LibRetro's forums are experiencing some downtime, which LibRetro doesn't tweet out much at all, so that's fine, and I don't really expect their forums to be in such of a great state. Anyways, YouTube creators putting out a video about maintaining creator work-life balance, which is always a joke. Yeah, I'm thinking, well, maybe 3 or 4 games did come out that we could talk about. I think we're otherwise well situated. It would be nice, frankly, if there was a January sale, but nobody would spend money in January or even February. So they have to be kind of winter sales. So yeah, here we have a game called Sorcerer's Tournament, which looks too low polygon for their own good, and then you have like an anime sorcerer here, and then the game itself doesn't look anything like that. $6.79. And then we have The Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia, which looks like there might be a mobile port for some kind of fishing game for $3.99 English only. I'll give this a follow, but it probably doesn't deserve it. And then let's see. We have a game called Loco, which obviously is just a train game. $14.99 English only. Then we have a game called Gardener's Path, which doesn't look particularly interesting. Some kind of block pushing Sokoban game from the looks of it. $4.49, bunch of languages. And then this free Steam games. Let's see how this works. Well, there's a pinned tweet from December 3rd of sales. Then Epic Games. Arguably, they shouldn't be allowed to use the same logo. Seems like you have to basically join the Discord. Which, yeah, arguably maybe giving away Steam keys on Discord would work a little bit better than Twitter. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Discord is just full of scams. Yeah, this is just follow me, retweet, and like. And pretty much anytime you see something like this where it's just like follow me and someone else and retweet and like, they are just trying to build up their Twitter account to potentially sell later. That would be my assumption anyways. So yeah, I'm not going to follow that account or waste my time on that, and I wouldn't recommend anybody else doing that. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.